Welcome and thank you to the West Yale Avenue Multimodal Bikeway Project public meeting tonight. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna do some intros here and then we'll get into the content after we do language interpretation split up too.
Bueno, creo que vamos a dar inicio a esta reunión. Gracias a todos por participar en esta reunión del proyecto de la ciclocalle multimodal de West Yale Avenue. Creo que vamos a dar inicio al programa una vez que demos la explicación sobre la interpretación.
So we have a language interpretation channel available through Zoom. So if you would like to select Spanish for interpretation, as you can see here, you can only do it through a tablet or the Zoom app on your phone. If everybody, including those who would like to hear English and those who would like to hear Spanish, can go to the bottom of with your Zoom bar there and select the globe icon and select your language of preference. And you can do that now.
Bueno, muy bien, esta es una reunión bilingüe y se está ofreciendo interpretación. Si por favor se conectan usando una tableta o computadora o utilizando el app en su teléfono. Y si pueden seleccionar el icono del globo, del icono de interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y seleccionan el idioma de su preferencia y de esa manera podrán escuchar la interpretación.
We'll pause to let everybody select a language. And I also see that 2 people have joined via phone. Those 2 people press *9 if you need to raise your hand to let us know you need Spanish. We'll have to work out another scenario. But other than that, you should be able to hear us here on the English channel. Okay. So, okay, great. And I already see some discussion on the chat. So thank you for getting involved there. We're going to move really quickly, rules of engagement. And then after that, I know Councilman Flynn wants to say a few words to say hello. So just quick rules of engagement. What you would expect, but we always need to make sure everybody's familiar. Use the chat box if you want to say hi or if you have comments or you have questions. You can raise your hand. We're not going to stop at every single point to answer those questions. Please be respectful to the other meeting participants. Realize you're here with your neighbors, your friends, and folks who everybody has a reason to be here and an interest in this corridor. And of course, don't use profanities or inappropriate language. And just a note, if you do end up speaking on this, and you'll note that we're speaking a little bit slowly, we have the interpretation going on at the same time. So we're trying to make sure that we allow room and space for that to happen. So quick orientation. Probably most folks have been on a Zoom meeting by now, but if you haven't, this meeting is being recorded. We plan on posting it on the city's website afterwards so you can share with neighbors if they weren't able to be here. Please keep yourself on mute until you're called on, unless we have a open session. We plan on having some good ways to discuss later on, so you're not going to be left in the dark the whole time. The chat box is open, and like I said, we'll have some Q&A sessions. After the meeting, the website you can go to find follow-up and the recording and everything is bit.ly, bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving. And you can always email bikes@denvergov.org if you need. And for those on the phone, since I know you may not be able to see the screen, bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving or bikes@denvergov.org. And at the end of the presentation, we'll give you a phone number to call in as well. So again, just a reminder to be respectful. So with that, before we go over the meeting overview, Councilman Flynn, would you like to say a few words? I know he and Stacy and Dana are on. We wanted to thank them for helping us out spreading the word.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate it very much. I'm happy to see the folks who are here. Can't wait till we can get together in person again. Thank you for doing this outreach into the Council District 2 community, especially those along Yale. I want to let folks know as they see this presentation that this is a different design than what we saw on Irving Street. And as you know, we've had some meetings on Irving Street. And I know some of the Irving neighbors might be here as well. And so I continue to not support the design on Irving Street, but you will see that this one is significantly different and I think can deliver safety for cyclists and pedestrians as well as attempting to slow down traffic on Yale, which is one of our goals as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And with that, take it away. Thank you, team.
Great. Thank you, Councilman Flynn. Quick meeting overview before we get into technical content here. We're doing welcome and introductions right now. And we're going to talk a little bit about why we're here and background. Some of you may be familiar with some of that, but we're going to go back over it just in case we have folks who haven't seen some of that info before. And then we're going to get into the corridor specific data for West Yale. After that, we'll go through the mobility plans for the corridor, which is what people are definitely here to see and hear. And then we'll have Q&A and possibly breakouts and talk about, and then we'll all come back together in the same room and talk about next steps and what to expect. Before we do all that, I want to do a polling session here. And basically this is going to pop up on your screen. And some of you may be familiar with it, but you can select your answer and then hit submit. And we'll keep it open for a minute, kind of Jeopardy style, sitting here waiting for folks to answer. And then we'll share the results afterwards. So Kira, can you go ahead and launch that? Okay, so this question is the only one for this session, and it's just asking, what is your relationship to the corridor? Which of these apply to you? Okay, looks like we can wait for a few more people here. This is always a little bit like watching microwave popcorn. You know, you don't want to wait too long, but all right, I think we've got almost everybody that's going to participate. I'll give it another 5 seconds. Okay. Okay, so we'll share the results here. So you should see in front of you that a lot of people here live along or near the corridor, which is great. There are a few people who use it to commute and for recreation and going shopping. Nobody here who's going to the school. I know that there are many community members who do that, so we just don't happen to have them here today. And accessing transit and for other. So it seems like we've got a lot of direct neighbors here, which is great. We'll have that breakout room pretty full. So, okay, so we're going to close that down. And then quickly, this is an intro for the breakout rooms that will happen later. So you don't have to do anything right now, but we're going to break out for discussion at the end of the meeting into groups of those who live or work along the corridor, those who live or work outside of the corridor. And then there will also be a way to include Spanish preference, and I can explain that towards the end of the meeting. Okay, so without further ado, here's your city team. You've seen some of these folks before, I'm sure. Gabby is the community designer, and you've seen her face before for some of the projects. Adam is the build manager. So he's basically the project manager for making sure that this gets in how it needs to go in the safest manner. Allison is the design lead. So she kind of does some of the engineering review of this. And Taylor is the planning lead. So she's got the background on how we landed where we are currently. And I'm Alicia, and I am the outreach consultant, so I'll be moderating today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gabby to give you some background.
Hey, you're actually going to turn it over to Taylor.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it was just said, my name's Taylor. I'm a planner here at Dottie. So I'm just gonna go through really quickly how we got here and some of our goals as a city. So it's no secret that Denver is getting bigger, more populated, roads are getting more congested. So one of the best ways that we can move more people safely and efficiently is to reduce those single occupancy vehicle trips, those trips where folks are driving alone in a car, and get those who can and would like to walk, bike, and take transit or carpool, telework, etc., to provide those folks with more choice to do so. Next slide. So the Denver's mobility action plan sets forth some ambitious goals that'll help us move people and provide choices that are safe and convenient for the users of our roadways. Our goal is by 2030 to have 30% of commuters biking, walking, or taking transit, an 80% reduction of emissions by 2050, and 0 traffic deaths by 2030. One of our really big goals here is safer streets for everyone. That goal of having 0 fatalities by 2030 is extremely important to Dottie as an agency and the city overall. We're kind of seeing traffic fatalities climbing, and we'd like to curb that trend. So this brings us to why are we building bikeways? There's a number of reasons, the first of which is that Vision Zero goal to provide safe space for folks to ride their bikes. We also have an ambitious goal of building 125 new miles of bikeways between 2019 and 2023. And we're definitely well on our way to achieving that goal. We are also trying to increase mobility options. So like I said, give folks the choice if they want to walk or bike. We're not saying everyone has to walk and bike all the time everywhere. We're just providing that opportunity so that more folks can get around how they choose. And then to improve access. So the goal is to have 100% of folks within about a quarter mile of the bikeway. So this slide is kind of talking about the public right-of-way. So the part of the right-of-way that the city manages and owns and helps operate is kind of between the property line to property line. That's like at the back of sidewalk. Thank you, Alicia. To the other side of the street's back of sidewalk. So we have a pretty limited right-of-way, pretty limited space to build here. And streets are, one of our largest and most important public spaces. So why are we building safe and comfortable bikeways? We've done, actually, Dr. Cog conducted, the Denver Regional Council of Governments conducted a study a few years back and found that about 16% of people in Denver regularly feel comfortable riding a bicycle in Denver today. We call those kind of the highly confident and the somewhat confident group. Next slide. And then 75% of those folks said that they would ride a bike if there were more comfortable facilities to do so. So we call those the interested but concerned group. And so we're really trying to target this group and provide bikeways that they feel comfortable riding a bike on. So this could be anyone from older adults to little kids to just anyone who doesn't feel super comfortable sharing the road with a car. This is kind of how we got here. In 2011, we adopted Denver Moves Bicycles. That was kind of our first citywide community-driven bike master plan. In 2015, this project, West Yale, was also recommended again in the update to Denver Moves Bicycles. And then 2018, this project was again confirmed in Blueprint Denver as a bicycle priority corridor. And now here we are today. We've identified this opportunity to restripe the roadway through a planned paving project. So paving is just one of many, many ways that we build out improvements to our network. We're paving every year about 400 to 500 miles of roadway, and about 10 miles of those are being planned for bike facilities. So this is just a small way we add bikes facilities to our roadways. And then here's just a kind of a quick overview of a bunch of other projects going on in the area. We've got the Irving and Bates neighborhood bikeways, which are slated to be installed in the next year or two. We've got a couple of Vision Zero projects, including one on Sheridan, one on Federal, and then some road identified on Federal. And then we've got a bunch of signal projects as a part of those Vision Zero projects. And then in the kind of pinkish color, we can see all of the 2023 roadway paving projects. And then in the blue, some Federal Boulevard sidewalk gap projects. So I think we're going to do another polling session here.
Yep. So this is going to be our second of 2 polling sessions, and it's going to ask about you again, so we know who's here. Kira, go ahead and launch that, and I can explain it once we have it up. So this just asks how you typically use this street. You can select all that apply, but obviously some people may use multiples, but just go ahead and select what you typically do on this roadway. Okay, we still have answers coming in, so we'll give it another few seconds. We have somebody who doesn't see a poll. Stephen Bartel. Okay, it's usually in a separate window, Stephen, so check behind your Zoom window and everything and make sure you see it. Other folks, let us know if you're not seeing a poll as well. I do have a lot of responses, so I think probably it's an individual. Okay, we'll give just a few more seconds. All right, we'll close it in 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Kira. Okay, and I'll share the result. Okay, Kira shared the results. Thank you. So it looks like we have quite a few people who walk or use a wheelchair on the corridor. Great to have your perspective here. Some people who bike or scooter as well. And then of course, quite a few people who drive as well. There's some transit riders and then some rideshare as well. So primarily driving and then walking and then biking. So, and parking, as somebody points out, that's a good point. Okay, great, thank you. We can close that out and then we're gonna move on with this. That'll help us also in our breakout rooms. That and the first poll help us assign which breakout room you'll go to. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in that room, but it's an initial assignment. So with that, this time I will turn it over to Gabby. I'm pretty sure I have that one right. So yeah. To talk about the corridor.
Absolutely. Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Gabriel Cerrado. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I am over in transportation design in Dottie. I am one of the community designers, which basically I try to help coordinate. I manage a couple of projects and then I also help coordinate a variety of different projects. So some of you may have seen me in a couple of other meetings for other projects as well. Next slide, please. So we're going to be talking, obviously, you know, that our study area for West Yale is from Sheridan Boulevard to Irving itself. We consider this a little bit of a bicycle gap project because we do have already existing bike lanes on Yale west of Sheridan Boulevard. And so with the upcoming Irving Street bike lanes on the other side, so basically we're just trying to sort of fill in this gap that we have of our bicycle network itself. Now, the existing conditions sort of, you know, obviously you all know, Yale, next slide, please. Obviously a lot more than we do, but itself, the stretch in particular is a mile and a quarter. Yale is considered a collector. The posted speed limit is of 30 miles per hour. And we have these really narrow sidewalks throughout the corridor. These are basically grandfathered in. This is based on, obviously when the neighborhood was redeveloped back in the 70s and 80s. And so those were the standards, unfortunately, back then. These are, of these type of sidewalks over there. Like I mentioned, we do have obviously bike lanes on the west side of Sheridan Boulevard, but this is also a transit corridor. The number 35 actually runs every 30 minutes or so. The cross section, right now on Yale, one of the reasons why it seems really, really wide, because parking is technically allowed on both sides of the street. So we have 36 feet from curb to curb of space. But so this is one of those issues in Yale. If you go to the next slide, please, why we're seeing such high speeds on the corridor, because it's so wide and not, definitely not, we don't have that many people parking there at all. So like we mentioned, it's 30 miles per hour. When we gathered the data going westbound, we're seeing 37 miles per hour, and then going eastbound is 39 miles per hour. We have about 9,400 average daily vehicles going through this particular section of Yale, and this is way above what our standard, our comfortable standard of variation when it comes to our streets and speeds. So again, it's posted at 30, but we're seeing on average 39 miles per hour, which is not great whatsoever. And obviously, like we mentioned, one of the main reasons, next slide, why we're seeing such high speeds is a really wide corridor, 36 feet, and we don't have people parking there. When we have gathered counts on Yale at 2 points, one, it was between midweek in the AM, obviously to assess that residential parking component to Yale. And then the other one we assessed actually because we have two churches on this corridor, in this mile stretch. So we have two churches here. So we also took a parking count during church hours, just to see if that changes in any, what are we seeing on the corridor? And we're still seeing less than less than 15% utilization rate. It's actually closer to 5% utilization rate overall. So, just imagine this is one of the main reasons. So you have nothing, basically you have this really wide road throughout, and nothing really, that can stop somebody really, aside from this traffic lights that we have along the corridor itself. So those are one of the reasons why we have such high speeds in the corridor. And then next slide, please. We also have really high number of crashes that take place on the corridor as well. In total, we have in the last, 5 years, we've seen 85 crashes on the corridor, with basically 6 of them being bicycle and pedestrian. So a car hitting a pedestrian, somebody that is walking, or a car hitting somebody that is riding their bicycles on the corridor. This is really concerning, as 4 of the vulnerable road users crashes have actually taken place by Gust Elementary, which is definitely not acceptable whatsoever. None of them are acceptable, but obviously when kids are involved, it's a different story. It's a next level. So we are seeing these really high crashes. We do have a lot of crashes overall in this corridor. And so we need to definitely do something about it. Next slide, please. So based on the speeds and volumes, the way that we assess what kind of facility best fits, we have this handy dandy graph that you see over on your left. That basically this is how we measure what kind of bicycle facility we need to install on the corridor. For Yale itself, based on the speeds and volumes, we are literally off the charts, unfortunately. What we know that we need to go sort of for that next level, but also we are very well aware of there's some maintenance elements, and then there's the community as well from elements that we heard back actually during the Irving conversations of, let's try to address the speed issues first, and then come back later if necessary to put those vertical elements on it. So for at this first stage of this bicycle facility, what we are recommending is a buffered bike lane that would be for the entire stretch of the 1.25 miles from Sheridan to Irving itself. This would be, in order obviously to install this bike facility, we would be removing parking throughout the stretch of the corridor itself. And then basically we'll be adding additional components to call out some of the mobility, the other benefits to the road users. Next slide, please. Which we're talking, first of all, we know that, for example, right now, right now Yale only has the center turn, like the yellow lines, the center lines themselves, the yellow lines that you see on the road, they're skipped. Obviously, we'll be changing that to a solid. That should certainly obviously help out. Then obviously the buffered bike lane facility itself is going to visually narrow the roadway component. Is going to provide that buffer from the really narrow sidewalk, against the speeding vehicles. We are adding those green crosswalk crossing markings at signalized intersections. And then some of the feedback that we definitely want to hear from you, and that we've already heard from our one-on-one stakeholder with our crucial partners on the corridor, is that we're going to be refreshing the striping and adding crosswalks, stop bars, and improved signage throughout the corridor itself, particularly at the school. So these are some of those additional mobility elements, safety elements that we want to install through this project. But this is also why the breakout sessions are really crucial. So you all can tell us basically, where are you walking to, where are you experiencing these issues, so that then we can analyze and make a better make a better project overall.
Gabby, do you want to describe the green crossing markings, what those are used for, in case somebody hasn't seen them in use?
Yeah. Totally. So the green crossing markings are specifically those designated areas where is for the bicycle facilities, where they'll be crossing the signalized intersections. Obviously, they're thermal and they're on the ground itself, but they highlight, right, basically this crossing where vehicles should be expecting crossing by a different mode, by the bicycles itself. So these would be right next to your traditional crosswalks. Bars that are right over there. So it's a double enhancement, basically, of these areas, of these major conflict points with the other modes, between people who are driving, people who are walking, and bicycling on the corridor. So obviously some of the project benefits, again, it connects to the destinations throughout the corridor. Like I mentioned, we have a couple of churches. We have Gust Elementary as well in the area. This is considered a gap project because, again, we have the bike lanes on West Yale, and then we have the upcoming bicycle facility on Irving. We're looking at improving safety through with this corridor, things, with the additional elements. And obviously we're, one of the major intents of all of this is that we're trying to fill in, we're trying to build a network of bicycle facilities, the same way that we have a different type of networks for our roadways, where we have arterial collectors and local roads. We're trying to build the same for bicycle, connection as well, so that not every trip, or so that people can feel more comfortable walking and biking as we continue, in their general trips. If you just need to go to the school to pick up your kid, or you just need to go to the grocery store, so you don't have to hop on your car. Those type, and just building a quality network where everybody definitely feels safe. So next slide, please. So a little bit of our project timeline. We are in this particular session, this particular meeting is about sort of giving you the information about this upcoming project, but we also want to hear back from you and understand what are your needs and your desires for the corridor itself. So this is where we're at right now. After this, basically, the team is going to come back, collect. We've already held one-on-ones with the school and with the churches on the corridor. So we're going to take all of that feedback. we're gonna start, the next process of the design phase. And then in May, we're gonna come back out to you and basically, show you the designs that we have for this corridor. Then we're gonna finish the design late this spring, and then we hope to install this facility in early summer. That was actually one of the requests by a few of our stakeholders and DPS, Denver Public Schools, to try to install it before the start of the school year in August. So that obviously we have, because this will be bringing new conditions to the corridor itself. So that is, I think we are ready, Alicia, to go to some of the breakout sessions. So we have ample time to hear back from you all about what you're looking for, right?
Yep, and I'm going to answer, or have the project team answer, just one or two overall questions that probably everybody's asking right now, given some folks have mentioned them in the chat.
Okay.
I did see a few folks mentioning something about COVID impacts on the volumes and the data we have in both directions. And just for background info, the volume and traffic and speed data we have is from pre-COVID, just before COVID started. I think it was fall of 2019 or January of 2020. The parking data is during COVID, which is one of the reasons, as Gabby mentioned, that we're talking to all of the churches individually and the elementary individually to make sure that we kind of make adjustments for what how COVID is impacting them right now as well. The second question, which I'm going to send to Gabby, is about plowing, because I know that a lot of folks have this question. A concern with the fact that right now the south side of Yale doesn't get as clear as it could, and how that would impact current parking, or if we could get it plowed enough to safely have a bicycle facility there in the future.
So obviously plowing, obviously we're still trying to master the ability to for bicycle facilities, right? For our roadways, I think we're doing pretty okay with plowing, and that is one of the main. That is another reason why we're going to attempt to do the traffic calming first, to lower the speeds before installing those vertical elements. Because it does become a lot more difficult to basically bring the small little plows that are meant for bicycle facilities all the way out here, on the second ring, basically outside of the Denver core, of the downtown core itself. So when it comes to just regular plowing, that is obviously a concern that our plow operators will still be able to plow the bicycle facility as a buffered facility to extend it, but obviously there's still that issue with all of our streets that are basically built in the Southwest Denver, where they were built to previous standards, where if you are plowing the road and we have these really narrow sidewalks, that snow ends up in the sidewalks and that starts detrimenting the other modes as well. So there's still that learning curve that we still need to have as a city. But as we try to implement, more of these, and we started having these discussions, a more robust network, it's easier for our operators to plow properly throughout, rather than having sort of sporadic, bike lanes throughout the area. So once we have a completed network, then it's going to be easier to plow, in this case, from West Yale all the way to Irving, down Irving, up and down Irving, and so forth. So, or Lowell, or the other ones as well.
Cool. I have one more. I'm going to give our interpreters a second to catch up. But before we get to this second one here, there was a general question also, and some of these specific questions we're going to wait to answer in the breakout session so we can kind of have a discussion, because I know we have questions on your questions on some of them. But for this last one, I think in the main session before we go to breakout is about what exactly is being considered. Of course, this isn't designed yet or anything like that, but what is being proposed or considered right now, whether it's a protected bike lane or a buffered bike lane. So Gabby, I'm going to go back to that slide that kind of shows what it looks like, one of the two slides. And then maybe you can cover that one as well. Okay. So Gabby, do you want to go through what buffer versus having vertical protection again?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, right now for West Yale, we have 36 feet from curb to curb. So basically, I know that here we have, again, the attached sidewalks, and what we call the Hollywood curb. So basically, whoop, it goes a little bit down. So it's not like a straight edge curb on the sidewalk itself. So between basically that Hollywood curb and then, between the curves itself, we have 36 feet. We are going to, obviously, we're going to maintain 2 travel lanes in each direction. We're going to add that center line in the middle. So that obviously delineates those travel lanes themselves. Then basically, it is through paint. We are, we have 2 feet where we have, basically double white stripes on it. And then we're going to hash it out. We're going to diagonal lines along the bike lane itself. And then in addition to that, we have the 6 feet of the bike facility itself. So, that is a buffered bike lane. When is the difference with a protected bike lane is basically on that buffer space. We add, there's different type of vertical elements. Here in Denver, we're focusing a lot on flex post. So basically just it's plastic posts. They're probably the size of your hand. And then that we put I believe is every 25 feet or every 50 feet throughout the corridor itself. We will be adding those flex posts at the intersections that are signalized. Some of the lessons learned in a couple of other buffered bike facilities that we have installed out here. And then on the east side of town is that if basically, for example, at Sheridan, oh my goodness, I forgot, in Dartmouth? Is it Sheridan and Dartmouth, Councilman Flynn, that we installed? It was, right? Oh, sorry, you're on mute and I see you're shaking your head. So at Sheridan and Dartmouth.
It was at Sheridan and Yale by the church at the top of the hill on the west side.
Oh, okay.
Where we have the vertical posts.
Okay, so we can see that right now.
Dartmouth is just painted lanes.
Gotcha, thank you. So actually it's on the other side of this whole corridor, this same corridor. So you guys can actually go out there and see it, where we at first originally didn't have any level of protection. And unfortunately, we kept hearing through 311 that people were using that lane, the bike lane to turn right onto South Federal, South Sheridan Boulevard. So we will be adding, that level of protection at the signalized intersections on this corridor. So you'll be able to see it. And then we've also, we're trying to analyze also some requests given by Gust Elementary as well. Some of the folks are there as well. So that is the main difference between a buffer and a protected facility. Is just basically that vertical element that will, obviously it will prohibit definitely somebody from utilizing that space overall.
And I said that was going to be the last question, and I want to make sure we can get to the breakouts, but quickly, since there was another one, the bike lane being considered as proposed is both the north and south side, so that it's 2 direct, one direction each way.
Correct.
And then also Councilman Flynn asked about crosswalk locations. There are currently crosswalks some places. Where else are crosswalks being considered? I don't know. Allison, is that maybe a good one for you? I know you're working on the answers here too.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, we're definitely adding more crosswalks if they're warranted with our uncontrolled pedestrian crosswalk guidelines. There are some with that and others that are controlled, but we are anywhere that it warrants to add a crosswalk, we will definitely do that.
And can you tell us what might make a crossing warrant a crosswalk? And it doesn't have to be detailed, but just some ideas.
Yeah, so some ideas that warrant a crosswalk would be if it's, an all-way stop, if you're near a school or a park, basically areas that have a lot of pedestrian activity, then that would warrant it.
Puppet nation being used.
Thank you.
Down or pull the U.S. into war.
Okay. And I think we've got a,
Everybody.
there we go.
There you go.
Margaret, I put you on mute, but you're certainly welcome to talk during one of the breakout sessions. It was just because we were hearing some background noise. So, okay. And then Taylor just answered the question about whether we can, whether folks can see this again later. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and try and get to the breakout sessions.
I saw that Sarah had her hand up earlier and asked, can West Yale be made wider? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. In order to make the street wider, we would have to take people's front yards and side yards, which is not something anyone wants and is extremely expensive. So unfortunately, we can't widen the roadway. Any other questions before we kind of move on to our next steps?
What about West Yale and Sheridan?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going east on Yale,
Okay.
you approach Sheridan, there's a left turn lane.
Mm-hmm.
Would there no longer be a left turn lane?
We are analyzing that. We're trying to figure out exactly. We are conducting count movements on Sheridan and Yale. Obviously, we don't want to take out that left turn lane if it's going to induce to, a lot of volumes, sort of people just lingering, trying to make that light happen. So that is part of that, still that design process. But we're trying to figure out how to, to just sort of to make it a safe facility crossing Sheridan, because we all know how unsafe Sheridan is. And at the same token, obviously have that balance with not congesting, the neighborhood, in the inside of the neighborhood of Yale.
Thank you for saying that, Gabby. You remember when CDOT did the widening and the new signal installation there, and they set the signal timing. It was a disaster for months while thank you, Dottie, worked with CDOT to try to extend the permissive, the protected left, the green arrow. And what it was a prohibited left after that. And you were able to work with CDOT to get the permissive flashing yellow arrow in so people can still continue to turn left. But I know that it still backs up from time to time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We have one more in the chat. Karen says, will sidewalks be put in along West Yale Wolf to Zenobia? Unfortunately, we do not have the funding at this time to install sidewalks, and sidewalks are actually the responsibility of the adjacent property owner.
And actually, sorry, and unfortunately, so because actually this is something that actually Councilman Flynn and I spoke about during our one-on-one. Actually, unfortunately what you see right there is actually a sidewalk. Again, all of these sidewalks are built back in really old school standards where this was enough. This is one of the reasons why, the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act actually was passed, because we had designs like this, right? Where somebody in a mobility device could not fit. And so what we are trying to do, unfortunately, if you actually go down there, it's overgrown grass and weeds from that property. So what we are doing along on this particular stretch, and then in another one as well, where there is a sight distance and a safety issue, is that we are calling our right-of-way enforcement team to inform that property owner that they need to trim it back to provide that, that as narrow as that sidewalk is, to be able to provide it back to the community.
And then one more question in the chat from Sarah. Has it been considered to remove the sidewalks to increase the bike lane? No, we are not in the business of removing sidewalks. We want to make sure that folks have a safe space to walk along Yale as well as bike.
Yeah. Yes, and I have seen, Rosario in this corridor. It's kind of interesting. Obviously, I get to see other projects and other corridors. There are folks that definitely allow their vegetation to encroach on the sidewalks. And, I know that, we don't like to, be mean to our neighbors, but obviously this is a safety issue. So if you have tried to talk to that person, to that neighbor or something along those lines, and it has been that has not led to anything, please report it to 311. Our folks will issue warnings. obviously we'll give a heads up. But it is something obviously as we have our neighborhoods and where we have these standards of sidewalks, it is crucial to literally have those 3 feet so that, you know, people can feel a little bit safe on it. So
If the bike lanes are definitely going to happen, are more drains going to be put in? Because I can tell you, in the winter, ice forms where there's trees, the shadow will cast. It'll be the shadow will cast, and it will turn to solid ice on the north side of the street where the trees are. So
Yeah.
it won't. I mean, I've ridden bikes. I've ridden for many years, and I avoid ice all I can. So
yeah,
either, you know, is it, and especially where people drive in and out with their driveway, because the plow comes through, it just throws it up on the driveway.
I know. Yeah.
So then there's not enough drainage. Because
Right.
there's not enough drainage, the snow just builds up. It turns
Builds
to
up.
ice. You're
Correct.
riding a bike in the winter. You have no place to go. So, you know, that's a design concern. If there's a certainty of doing these, then you're basically in the winter, you're putting people, you got to deal with that. That has to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is something that we, as Dottie, we're trying to work towards, obviously, how to master the ability to first of all, properly plow our roads. You know, right now, when we do have a pretty, you know, pretty big snow event, our you know, we plow, and then we plow the road, and that ends up in bike lanes, ends up in sidewalks, and so forth. So we are still on that, learning how to, you know, how to properly do this as you know, as we start building our roads to accommodate the other modes as well. So, but obviously that is definitely an issue overall, of, as you know, it is part of that we sort of have to deal with winter, and not just in this corridor, but all over, where we do have to sort of try to figure out how to properly plow through this, so that not that high level of ice builds up on top of it. Obviously, as a bicyclist, if you don't feel safe riding through there, you're still, the law allows you to go on the road if there's unsafe conditions on the bike lane itself, such as ice, like a big block of ice or something along those lines. You are allowed to basically use the traditional travel lane for that, you know, for that stretch. But it's part of a bigger issue that we have throughout Denver, where we need to accommodate how to properly maintain our roads.
Be rude and jump in. I have a quick question. So where I live on the corner, there's a storm drain, and whenever there's, you know, so I'll clear out all the leaves and all the other stuff that just like runs down when there's a rain, because if there's snow, all it takes is just a little bit of leaf accumulation to spear. I mean, you know, it's like beavers. And so, you know, I clear it out and I toss it in my yard, and then I get an ice blade and break up the ice that accumulates right along the edge of the sidewalk and the street, and then the water just melts really quickly. But so it's a double, you know, I don't have to do that. But my question is the resident, on top of cleaning the sidewalk, you know, clearing the snow from the sidewalk, are also required to clear the debris, the storm drain that's outside our property?
I think you kind of were breaking up a little bit. Was the question, is the resident required to clear the storm drain adjacent to their property?
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're actually not required to, but we really appreciate when you do.
Now,
your neighbors do too.
Yeah, so like Taylor's saying, if you're not required, if you are seeing a high debris on the drainage, that's something please also submit it to 311. Our folks would go out there and clear the drain. So please submit that if you can, but obviously we also do appreciate if you see, you know, debris, trash, you know, to pick it up as well, because obviously that ends up on the drain blocking it, and then it could also that piece of trash ends up in our rivers and so forth.
And folks, I'm gonna have to move on right now. We've got 2 more minutes and I want to respect everybody's time. We've got 2 more slides. Well, really only 1 more slide. Let me share my screen here. And I just want to make sure that we're able to wrap up here and give you an idea of next steps. Gabby already went over the, trying to get everything set up. Can you all see my next step slide now? Okay. Gabby already went over the timeline. So we have another meeting upcoming in May. So make sure you tell your neighbors if you continue to have concerns, or if you want to voice opinions in either direction, please tell your neighbors. We will send out mailers again, but we also send out electronic notification and, you know, an email that gives information on the next public meeting. So feel free to leave your email in the chat or visit the website. And I'm going to give you the project websites. I gave it earlier, bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving. And then ultimately we will post this meeting recording on bit.ly, bit.ly/Dottie YouTube, DOTIYOUTUBE. So keep an eye out for that. Feel free to pass on to your neighbors. And the website has many ways to submit additional information. To contact us directly, please email bikes@denvergov.org, BIKES@DENVERGOV.org. And make sure when you email that, you include West Yale Avenue bike lanes in the subject, because that includes a few different projects. Or call our hotline and leave the same information, your name, how to contact you back, and the subject, West Yale Avenue bike lanes. The hotline number is 303-223-6575, 303-223-6575. So again, we've recorded all your comments, even the ones still coming in, and we've recorded the meeting, and we are passing these on to the design team, and we will continue to take your comments up until, you know, the next meeting when we can all meet to discuss again. So I love all the discussion we had here, and we really, really appreciate it, and we appreciate your time tonight. So thank you all, and I hope you have a good night.